The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are simply that, opinions. All are presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law. Sensitive topics are discussed. Discretion is advised.
We are ready to talk. Mama, if you're listening, we need you to come home. We miss you.
We want to hear from you. We haven't heard anything directly.
This is very valuable to us, and we will pay.
The FBI is zeroing in a chilling new description of the man on Nancy Guthrie's porch, and the reward is now doubled. Plus, a renowned sketch artist steps in, revealing what the suspect might look like as the FBI manhunt continues this morning. Plus, we're being a voice for victims. 14-year-old Demaya Appling killed after she allegedly refused sexual advances from an older man. And we're counting down to the sentencing of the au pair. She's already pleaded guilty and told her story. The question now today, will she serve time? It's all coming up next for you right here on Opening Statements. Good Friday morning to you and welcome to Opening Statements. I'm Julie Grant. Are you ready for some coffee and some court? Let's get it started as we always do. Grab that cup of coffee or tea or whatever you're having this morning. It's time for my opening statement. Launch her. I think the judge should launch the au pair today at her sentencing. Defendant Juliana Magalhaes admittedly helped plan and carry out the murders of two people, Christine Banfield and Joseph Ryan. Then she struck up a deal for manslaughter and a recommendation from the prosecutor's office for time served in exchange for her trial testimony against Loverboy Taxman. Time served means that she gets credit for the time she's already spent in the jail, and then she is back in the streets. To me, that's not nearly enough time for what she did. Two people are dead. That little girl that the au pair was supposed to be caring for is now without her mom. This was a dastardly plot, and the consequences are heartbreaking. The judge doesn't have to accept the prosecution's recommendation. The judge can impose a sentence of up to 10 years in prison for Juliana Magalhaes, and I think she should. Juliana Magalhaes treated two people like their lives didn't matter. So she should have as much of her life spent within the confines of a prison. That's my opening statement this Friday morning. Let me know if you like it. Right now, time for your daily docket.
He stabbed his nephew Jesse multiple times in his upper body and threw his arm into his chest. And he stabbed his niece Sophia 17 times over her entire 45-pound body.
In New Jersey, we're going to be on verdict watch in the Mansion murders trial for defendant Paul Canaro. Jury deliberations beginning at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. In North Carolina, we've got the judge expected to announce his ruling on where defendant Austin Thompson is going, whether defendant Austin Thompson, deserves life in prison with or without the possibility of parole. Court starts up 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. We'll take you there live when it does. In Michigan, we've got the state's case resuming at 9 a.m. in the trial of Dale Warner. This guy's accused of murdering his wife, Dee, and hiding her body in a sealed tank on his property. Right now, let's take you to your top story. Nearly 2 weeks into the search for Nancy Guthrie, the FBI is unveiling some new details about the man on her porch the night she vanished. The FBI saying that the suspect is described as a man approximately 5'9" to 5'10", with an average build. In the video, he's wearing a black 25-liter Ozark Trail Hiker Pack backpack. The FBI released images of that backpack. Let's show you a closer look now. The reward also has been doubled. It was $50,000 for information leading to an arrest. Now it is $100,000. Let's talk about where we are in this case and where we need to go next. Let's bring in our law enforcement experts guests, Lieutenant Mike Gould and private investigator Manuel Gomez. Good morning to you both. Lieutenant, I'll begin with you. Where do things go today?
Hi, good morning, Julie. Yeah, things are obviously moving forward and not backwards. My analysis of this hasn't much changed fundamentally. I never really bought into the, and I might be wrong, of course, a traditional kidnapping of an 84-year-old victim on life-supporting medication that she required within 24 hours of her abduction. That made no sense. And if money and ransom was the motive, this is not something you would do, right? A kidnapping turns into capital murder if during the commission of a crime, the victim dies in your care. So that never made sense. Dealing with the media, no proof of life. There was so many things here that just, it's never happened. An 84-year-old victim, I mean, you can go back to the Lindbergh baby kidnapping, and I can't recall a case simply motivated by money that this would be a victim of a kidnapping, a traditional kidnapping.
Lieutenant, thank you. Manuel, what do you think the motivation of the suspect or suspects is?
Well, I believe that the motivation was either, like I said before in the past, something that either Savannah Guthrie did an interview or gave some type of comments, because there is nothing malicious about the mother. There is nothing, this mother is not a person, she went to church, she's not a person out there causing problems. And you got to remember, her daughter is extremely famous. And that's something that every star, co-host, anchor needs to take a lesson from this case. Do not bring your family on TV. Do not expose your loved ones. Even though you might not think you're being a threat, you're being a threat to your family, because there are people out there that are malicious and evil and will take advantage. And this is a sad lesson for Savannah to learn. But the motivation in this case, I believe, was something out of spite towards Savannah, because there is no indications why you would be spiteful to the mother.
Manuel, thank you for that. Let's take a look at some of what Savannah put up on her Instagram yesterday. Savannah posting a beautiful tribute to her mom there. This family must be in so much pain. Lieutenant, if you had an opportunity to speak to the Guthrie family, what would you say to them right now?
Yeah, well, Julie, our prayers are with them, of course, but, pragmatically, we're 13 days into this, and, I'd pray for the best, but prepare for the worst scenario. In my mind, taking off with what Manuel said, I do believe this is not going to be a stranger. I think there's an emotional component to this, whether it was somebody who had a vengeance towards Savannah or something else, but it's not just a random stranger doing this. It makes no sense whatsoever. So there's going to be an emotional, maybe a revengeful motive, maybe some type of stalking situation that John Hinckley and Jodie Foster years ago was motivated by that. So I agree with Manuel. But of course, one thing that Manuel talked about, internationally, there's something called kidnap and ransom insurance. It sounds kind of bizarre, but a lot of it, that's very popular among athletes and very high-profile celebrities because it helps during this period of time. When you saw some of the private people going in and out of that house, that's probably precise. They were checking the mail. They were going to get clothing for the Guthrie family, who is now, they need security wherever they are. The police generally did not provide private security. That's just not what they do. So it's incumbent on the family to get private security. The need for private investigators probably is not necessary at this point because obviously the full weight of the government is on this case, including up to and including the President of the United States, which is, again, highly unusual.
Mm-hmm. Right, Lieutenant. Manuel, let me go to you on something, please. The timing of all of this, where we are, and we're past the 2-week mark now in this search. When I think about the time that's needed to investigate something like this, Manuel, where would you say these investigators are. Is this about the right amount of time? You know, I think that we've talked about this before in the program, but I think this is worth a repeat today, because the question I keep hearing from everybody is, well, what's taking so long? What's taking so long? When people are asking me about this case, and I know that investigations take time. Manuel, your thoughts on the time here?
Well, you brought up a great point, Julie. One of the things that delayed this case from the beginning was these bogus ransom notes. I mean, they're sending ransom notes to TMZ. Who the heck is Harvey Levine? Why would you want to send him a ransom note? Makes no sense. And the fact that I've been saying from day one of this case that these were all bogus, and that now you got a guy saying, well, send me 1 Bitcoin and I'm going to turn around and release the information on what I know. The fact is, we've been playing catch up. The Pima police were not prepared for this. The FBI didn't come in to about approximately 4 to 5 days later, and that's why it's taking so long. And finally, Julie, that the FBI is out there, and like I said to you way back in the beginning, that they're doing a 2 to 5 mile radius search. All right, but this is not a professional. This guy has shown everything to be unprofessional, and the fact that he threw his gloves out the window, come on. This is not a guy who knows what he's doing, but it is somebody that's a killer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Manuel, thank you for that. So let's play a clip. You brought up TMZ.
Yep.
We're going to show some video. This is a clip from TMZ, and this has to do with the emailing, the request for Bitcoin. Let's take a look at some of this, please.
This morning, just after 8 a.m. Pacific time, he sent us this other email complaining that he is not being taken seriously. He says that he wants the Bitcoin, which is worth around $67,000, for several reasons. Number one, he says by coming forward, he will become a, as he puts it, a national rat. He also says, and this is a quote, he doesn't want to be, quote, incriminated like that guy Carlos.
Okay, so that was from yesterday. Harvey Levin there talking about another email, this person saying they want to be taken seriously. I mean, well, I see you shaking your head, so I'll let you respond first here. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, this just shows the guy's a scammer. I mean, this has the earmarks of the William Brock case. In that case, you had the scammer calling up to scam this old man out of $12,000, and this scammer is trying to scam this family out of $60,000. But it's not just $60,000. I believe it is the same scammer that was trying to get $6 million. It is the same person. We cannot pay attention to Harvey Levine and TMZ. We need to focus on grassroots murder investigation, being out there, sweeping the areas, bringing the body dogs, and getting out there and doing what detectives do. That's what we need to waste our time on.
Yeah, bringing in the dogs. I know Lieutenant Gould agrees with that, K9 expert. Lieutenant, do you agree that these requests for ransom by way of Bitcoin being sent to media are bogus?
Yeah, I do. And I also agree. You know, when Harvey came out with these letters, he described, or the ransom notes, or whatever we call them, he described them as being extremely sophisticated, well-written, articulated. He even said if a college professor had to edit it, they'd say they'd get an A+. What I think is going to find out is that AI has influenced some of this the development of these ransom cases. But it's absolutely absurd that somebody without proof of life is going to pay ransom to somebody that is dealing with the media, not the family. These things are usually very personal. They don't want the media or law enforcement involved in a traditional kidnapping. They want to deal directly with the family and coerce them into giving money. So it's, again, all of this is related to the kidnapping is a distraction, as Manuel said, I believe. And as far as the investigation goes, I think it is moving properly and in the right direction. But for the ransom notes, again, and it's not the FBI's fault. They got to track that, and very frankly, it might be good for them to be distracted by that. The media and everybody else is distracted by that, while they can do their job of actually solving the crime. So it can work both ways in these instances.
Right, sure can. Great points from you both. We want more. Manuel, Mike, stay tuned. Friends at home, don't go anywhere. When we come back, we're talking about this sketch. So a famous forensic sketch artist put this together. It's not an official sketch from the FBI, but maybe it could help. It's trending this morning. That's coming up. And the sentencing for the au pair just a couple hours away. How much time should she get?
It's crazy here. I heard, like, I don't know what was that. And Brendan said, he just dropped the knife, because he had a knife. And then he said, drop the gun to Brendan. They were yelling. I couldn't understand. We were super fast.
The Court TV podcast will return.
No, well, I'm innocent. I'll let you know that.
That's
Tell
just
you that. I didn't do anything. Like I said, I didn't even know what was going on until the FBI and the Pima County detective arrived, and they told me, well, you're being detained for kidnapping, and all of a sudden they read me my Miranda rights. Now you're being under arrest. I'm like, what the fuck is going on?
and now free to go.
Yeah, now I'm free to go.
Oh man, what a night, huh?
Bro, tell me about it.
The whereabouts of Nancy Guthrie and the person or persons behind her disappearance remain unknown. But a renowned forensic artist is looking to change that with her latest sketch. Artist Lois Gibson stepped out of retirement and released this unofficial sketch of the suspect on Facebook. This as investigators continue focusing on the surveillance images that were taken from Nancy Guthrie's home. In that same post, Gibson said, quote, I guessed at the parts of the face covered with a ski mask on this Nancy Guthrie kidnapping suspect. And she goes on to say, quote, only thing somewhat sure are eyes and part of lips, mustache. Again, this sketch isn't viewed as an official image of the suspect. Gibson made the drawing to try to aid in the investigation, but she was not asked to do so. So how key could this unofficial sketch be? Let's talk it. Let's bring back in our law enforcement investigation experts, Manuel Gomez and Mike Gould. Manuel, I'll start with you here. Your thoughts on the sketch?
Well, I think it's a good sketch. I know it's a little bit of a reach, but it gives them a direction, kind of like what I said in the beginning. When you watch the video of that guy moving, he moved like a man in his mid-40s to early 50s, and this sketch portrays that. And second, you do see under the lip the goatee, okay? So yes, I agree with the sketch, and I'm glad it gives people something to work on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate it, Manuel. Lieutenant Gould, your thoughts on the sketch?
Yeah, Julie. So early on in this, I was critical, or I gently critiqued the sheriff's office by providing too much information, ambiguous information. There were certain things that happened, and I hate to do it Monday night quarterbacking, closing the crime scene prematurely. But now, and so I thought it was a good thing that law enforcement was silent. But I think it's important that they come out and start to clear up some of these things. Because what happens is we start chasing shadows. I mean, listen, if that sketch is somehow accurate, it's way beyond my understanding of how somebody could get a sketch based on the images we saw. But maybe that's completely possible. But I'm just always afraid we start chasing shadows. And the more information is out there, then without clarity, we all do. The media, I do. Everybody starts trying to make assessments of things, and we very often start going down rabbit holes. So, I mean, look, if it turns out that this was a resemblance down the road, this is all a circumstantial case, barring somebody confessing to this. So all these bits of evidence that you see being recovered, the gloves and all of this stuff, is going to be crucial in the prosecution. So I'm just hopeful that law enforcement is obviously, following proper, which I'm certain they are. The FBI, I have complete confidence in. But, the sketch, is this going to take us all down some, my next door, when I get in the elevator, I'm going to call the FBI because my next door neighbor looks like that. I don't know. I'm a little leery of it personally.
Sure. Let's talk about something else. Let's talk about whether you professionals think this was done by one person or by multiple people acting in concert. Manuel, what do you say to that?
I believe it was done by possibly two, one waiting in the car and the guy going inside, because one of his relax, how much time he spent to do this. And then you got to remember, this is not a woman that weighs 100 pounds. Judging by Nancy Guthrie, she was at least 150 to 185. She was a, well voluptuous woman. And to carry that body, dead weight, come on. She didn't walk to that car, Julie. All right, that backpack was full because he had either duct tape, he had rope, and he had something to drag along with him. So I do believe it was possibly somebody with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you would think this guy, Nancy Guthrie with her mobility issues, where would she be able to walk? If this clown walked, somebody's got to pick him up somewhere. So to your point, Manuel, that's a great one. When you logically work through it, you would think at least a getaway driver somewhere, because how far could she go? 50 yards was what they said she could potentially do without assistance. That's it. Not very far, and we know this is a remote area, the Catalina foothills, where her home is located. Lieutenant, what do you think about the number of people involved? Your thoughts, please.
Yeah, Julie. So again, we're in a position now, we have breadcrumbs. We have very little information of really what's going on behind the scenes with the interviews that are taking place. We saw them searching the cesspool, the manhole cover of the cesspool. We've seen a lot of things developing beyond just a pure abduction away from the house. So what I would say, look, it's not unusual for somebody to enlist the help of somebody. How many times have we heard that a contractor or an employee was paid a sum of money to commit a murder or abduct somebody? So I do think there's more than one person involved, maybe not in the physical removal of her, because we don't really know anything about the physical removal of her, where she is. Possibly she could be within 1/4 mile of the scene. That's not unusual when a body or a victim is recovered very close to the scene. So I just think we're grasping at straws at this point, and we continue to until somebody gives us a little bit more information, excludes maybe the son-in-law. Some of the family members have not been excluded from this case at all, and they were the eyewitness. If you think of the son-in-law was the only eyewitness to this. He dropped her off, presumably. So again, whether he was involved nefariously or he has more information to provide. But nobody's been excluded. They said they have a few people of interest, but they're being very closed-lip on this, and this causes us all to go kind of off the rails trying to figure out what the heck's going on here.
I know, Lieutenant, exactly. Well, great insights from you both, as always, as we head into the weekend and hopefully some answers and Nancy Guthrie's safe return. Manuel Gomez, Mike Gould, thank you both so much. Still ahead this morning on Opening Statements, we're talking about a teen girl who was murdered, and there's an older man who's accused of murdering her, allegedly because she rejected him. That's the allegation. Well, this morning, we're being a voice for victims for Demaya Appling. Plus, the au pair comes back to court today. That's right, she's going to be sentenced for her criminal activity. How much time should she get? That's coming up.
Now, back to the Court TV podcast.
This morning, we're giving a voice to the victim in the fatal rejection murder trial. Demaya Appling was only 14 years old when she was murdered after she allegedly refused the sexual advances of defendant Waymore Gerhardt. According to the state of Florida, the then 19-year-old Gerhardt lured Appling to his home, made sexual advances towards her, and when she rejected him, he shot her to death. Again, those are the allegations from the state of Florida. Now, during audio recordings of his police interview, Waymore Gerhardt claimed that the sex was consensual and that Appling left and that he just never saw her again.
Why did you take her that night? Because you wanted her and she didn't want you, so you were going to prove a point to her, and you were going to take her and do whatever you wanted with her, and she was going to comply. It's not something disgusting when you're having sex with a 14-year-old? That's not something disgusting?
You're accusing me of doing something to her. That's disgusting.
Having sex with her is bad enough.
Would you rather me be honest?
I want to know why she was in your car.
So was this young girl a pawn in some twisted plot for sex? and who was watching out for her? Let's talk about this. Let's bring in the CEO of the National Center for Victims of Crime, attorney Renee Williams, and criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Joe Tamburino. Good morning to you both. Renee, as you know, this is Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. And as soon as I saw that we were covering this trial, I thought, oh my gosh, it's hitting right at this month where the National Center for Victims of Crime does so much to raise awareness, to let people know about dangers. This poor child. Tell me your thoughts about the facts as we know them, please, Renee.
Well, I want to first call out, because we are doing a Voice for Victims, the defense's opening argument. And Joe might disagree with me as a defense attorney. He might say that's all they had and they had to go with it. But one of the very first things this defense attorney did was victim blame Demaya. He described her as a child running the street, using drugs. He did not acknowledge her as a murder victim. And he started out by saying the world failed Demaya, trying to almost dehumanize her, it felt like to me. And again, maybe that's all he had, and maybe he had to go with it. But I just thought in 2026, we were a little bit beyond victim blaming 14-year-olds.
Sure. Fair point, Renee, fair point. And Joe will tell us straight up. Joe, do you think it was in poor taste what defense counsel did?
Well, thanks for having me on. No, only because, when you're a defense attorney, you've got to use whatever you have. I think this case should have been settled. I think that, some type of an agreement should have been arrived at, because the evidence is overwhelming. You've got the DNA evidence. You've got the texts. You've got the nephew testifying against him. You've got the changes of stories. It's overwhelming evidence. So I don't know why the case wasn't resolved before. Now, maybe the state's not offering anything, do life in prison and that's it. So I'm sure the defense attorney, yes, it's untasteful, but he probably has no other defenses.
Yeah. The facts are very bad with this case, period. Waymar Gerhardt is not in a good position on these facts. Let's take a look at a clip. This is from one of the police interviews with the victim's friend.
She was scared. She kept saying, I don't usually get scared, but please just stay on the phone with me till I get to your house. And so I did. When she got to the house, you could tell that she was shook. She didn't say much of nothing, but she was shook.
Maybe because her last words that she ever spoke in her phone by text were that she was with you. And she was scared of you and didn't want to be with you. And maybe that's why you decided to do what you do, because you couldn't have her, but you wanted her. And she wouldn't give you the time of day.
I don't want her at all. I have no friend.
Okay, so a little mashup our editors put together. First, the victim's friend talking about how petrified Demaya Appling was. And then we see the investigator leaning on the defendant in that audio recording that has been played in court, and we have it, and she goes after him pretty good. Renee, tell me your thoughts about how terrified Demaya Appling must have been when she goes to the house thinking she's meeting the nephew, because the nephew is her friend, thinking that that's all it is, and then here it's allegedly Waymar Gerhardt who's coming on to her.
Sure. And I think the important thing to note here is she was a 14-year-old child. And even calling this the fatal rejection case kind of takes some of that away. She was a 14-year-old who was coming to meet a friend. And it's frankly one of the reasons we have Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, is to bring awareness to the fact that when teenagers are dating for the first time, when they are first having these experiences, they're also not at a maturity level to be dealing with a lot of these emotions. So she probably had a lot bottled up inside of her already. She is showing up for something, and she is still just 14 years old. So her ability to process what was going on isn't as fine-tuned as an adult. And so I'm sure she was terrified, especially with the bait and switch. And I don't think that, this was a fatal rejection. This was her rejecting being raped.
Yes, Renee, I agree with everything that you said. Yes, she's a baby. This is exactly why we're doing this segment right here to spotlight this. She was a baby, 14. He was 19. He was a man, an adult man. Joe, you said earlier you think this should have been settled. Talk to me here, and I always say don't blame the defense attorneys. They've got a tough job. They're protecting the rights of their clients. What do you think the best way to protect him would be? You talked earlier about settling this. What kind of settlement might be appropriate if he did what is alleged?
Well, something where he would have to serve, say, at least 30 years in prison, or maybe even 40 years in prison. Something where he would have at least a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel so that when he turns 60 or 65, he could possibly be released. Something like that. Because, you know, I mean, we're going through this whole trial. The evidence is completely overwhelming. I agree with Renee completely that the victim here is a child. I mean, 14 years of age. What are you, in 9th grade? I mean, of course she's a child. So to avoid all of that, I would have offered him something where he has the possibility of release. I know that is very distasteful. It's hard to swallow. But rather than go through this whole process and, you know, how sometimes demeaning it is to the victim, I would have offered him something.
Right, Joe. Great points. Try to get some kind of deal with a substantial, as you said, amount of prison time attached and consideration for accepting responsibility. Again, if he did what is alleged, we all know he's cloaked in the presumption of innocence here. Renee, for this victim's family, could we talk a bit about that? With teen dating violence and all of that. We know we have the primary victim, Demaya Appling, but then also you and Joe know this is gut-wrenching for her family to hear this testimony, to hear very graphic details about what was done to her in the brutal way that she was shot and killed by somebody. Renee, what would you say to the family if you had a chance to speak with them?
I think I would tell them first to ignore everything the defense said in their opening argument. I think that was my biggest issue, was they were laying the blame at the feet of her family. This is not your fault. This is one man who was a bad actor and who you never could have predicted. So don't let the Facebook comments and the world piling on tell you that you did something wrong. You did not. I hope that they get a chance to make a victim impact statement. We have found that those are incredibly healing. And so at the end, I hope that they do get a chance to confront this man directly for what he did to their little girl.
Mm-hmm. Right, Renee. Renee, you and Joe made great points today. We thank you both for your insights. And as we're reflecting on Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month here on Opening Statements, we want to, of course, remember the victim, 14-year-old Demaya Appling. She was a child who was loved by her family, especially her grandma. She was the apple of her eye, a beautiful little angel with her whole life ahead of her. And everyone who loves her so much is praying that she gets justice. We'll be right back.
This is the Court TV Podcast.
Welcome back. Now for what's tipping the scales of justice. Let's talk about it when it comes to Brendan Banfield and his co-defendant, Juliana Magalhaes, the au pair. So Mr. Banfield has been convicted of murdering his wife, Christine, and another man named Joseph Ryan. And he's expected to be sentenced to spend the rest of his life behind bars, which is the mandatory penalty for aggravated murder in the Commonwealth of Virginia. But later this morning, we'll find out what will happen with the au pair. So she pleaded guilty to the crime of manslaughter in the death of Joseph Ryan. Remember, she testified and admitted that she shot him. Court TV's Kelly Kraft has more.
Juliana Magalhaes came from Brazil to live and work for Brendan and Christine Banfield as their au pair. But less than a year later, Magalhaes became something more to Brendan.
At some point, while you were working for the Banfield family, did your relationship with the defendant change?
Yes.
How did it change?
It became sexual, physical relationship.
The two became lovers, but kept their relationship a secret from Christine. As their affair grew more serious, she said Brendan came up with a plan to get rid of his wife.
Did he give you more information or more detail about what he intended to have happen?
Yeah, he said he wasn't going to hire anybody because that is something that throughout investigation can be discovered easily, and that he had heard of a website called FetLife.
Magalhaes said she and Banfield opened an account on FetLife, a fetish dating website, using this picture of Christine. They started looking for users willing to come to the house to act out a rape fantasy. She said Banfield eventually chose Joseph Ryan for the role.
Did he say why he picked Joe?
He would be the person to play the role they needed the person to play, which means being aggressive and hold her down and come over to the house and bring stuff.
The items Ryan was asked to bring included restraints and a knife. The plan was for Banfield to wait at this McDonald's for Magalhaes to call and alert him to Ryan's arrival. Banfield would then return home, kill Ryan, and then frame him for Christine's murder.
Do you swear or affirm to testify truthfully in this case under penalty of law?
Charged with aggravated murder, Brendan Banfield testified at his own trial and told jurors that it was Joseph Ryan who killed Christine.
I saw him do a downward stabbing stroke, and that's when I fired at him.
Not true, according to Magalhaes, who testified it was Banfield who killed his wife.
He got on top of her, and that's when I first saw him stab her with a knife.
Where in her body was he stabbing her?
Her neck.
I understand we have a verdict?
The jury deliberated for nearly 9 hours over 2 days before reaching the verdict.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of aggravated murder of Joseph Ryan and Christine Banfield as part of the same act.
Magalhaes pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter in a deal with prosecutors. This was in exchange for her testimony against Brendan Banfield. Prosecutors agreed to recommend time served, but it will be up to the judge to decide how much time she will serve for her role in the killings.
That was Kelly Craft reporting for us. So 11:30 a.m. Eastern is the time that the au pair will go back before the Honorable Penny Azcarate to learn her fate. So what should the judge do with her? Let's bring in our legal analyst guest and pose that question, criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Joe Tamburino. Joe, what do you think? What should the judge do with the au pair?
I would give her 10 years. I don't think the judge is going to do that, but that's what I would do. And, the timeline here is very interesting because, she's arrested, Juliana's arrested, I believe, in September of 23. And then a year goes by and Brendan's arrested. And then a month later, in October of 24, Magalhaes and the prosecutor strike this deal. And then basically 2 months after that, in December of 24, you get an indictment against Brendan. But what I'm interested in is what happened in that year, from the fall of 23 to the fall of 24, when Magalhaes is in custody. What's happening on her case? Why did the prosecutor make this kind of a deal? I could see the manslaughter deal, sure, but we're going to recommend that you walk right after sentencing. I mean, that is so unique.
You're right, Joe. It is. And by the way, Joe for judge, saying you give her 10 years. I'm with you. Max her out. She should be maxed out. 10 years, as Joe noted, the maximum penalty for manslaughter in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So that's as much time that the judge has. When you think back about that year, Joe, we know the defense position was that the government leaned on her, that they leaned on her and, put their thumb on the scales of justice, so to speak, to get her to make up this story. That was the defense theory, the defense position. I think they really needed her because this guy did such a good job covering his tracks. I don't think that she was leaned on to make up a story. I think she was leaned on to testify and maybe doesn't understand how it works here in America. But I agree with you. There should be a hefty penalty. It should not be a time-served recommendation. Joe, do you think they did that, because they know at the end of the day, the judge can do what she wants. We can promise you the recommendation, but whoopsies, if the judge gives you 10, sorry, we held up our end of the bargain.
Yes, and that's what I think is likely going on because, the prosecutors did a really good job in this case. So I don't see them as inept or anything like that. No, I'm not saying that at all. But I think you could very well be right, which is they said, look, here's the 10 years, and sure, we're going to recommend that you be released from prison, knowing all well that a judge is not going to do that. But, today, I wouldn't be surprised if the judge gives her something like 5 years. I wouldn't do that, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Right, Joe. Judge Penny Ascarate, who we've seen before, highly respected judge in Fairfax County, Virginia. She presided over the Johnny Depp, Amber Heard landmark case, and she has a reputation of being a very tough, no-nonsense judge who knows the law, knows the rules of evidence, and we've seen her in action. She is excellent. She has served in our Marine Corps. I would not want to take my chances in front of her, with the au pair, like to not have, but look, what can the au pair do? I mean, she's not in a position to bargain. She's going to have to just, take her punishment. I think the judge is going to give her a hefty one. Joe, what do you think the judge will do? Do you think she'll give her close to 10 or 10?
I think she's going to give her 5 years. And I think what the defense will argue is two things. Number one, that Margulies was absolutely critical to get a conviction on Brandon. Without her, no conviction. That's what they're going to argue. They desperately needed her, and she did her job. The second thing they're going to argue is, look, Judge, if you give her the max, you're sending a signal out there for people not to cooperate. Because, the prosecutor needs people to cooperate, whether it's in organized crime or street crime or domestics, whatever it is, the prosecutor needs to be able to get certain individuals to cooperate. And Judge, if you just simply throw the book at her, what you're doing is you're sending a signal out there saying, don't cooperate, because if you do, you're going to get the max anyway. I think that's what they're going to argue. But in the end, I think the judge is going to do 5 years. I would do 10.
Joe, all really sharp points you made, and you really got me thinking about how, I don't know if the prosecution could have proven this without Juliana Magalhaes. I mean, really taking a step back, like I was thinking as you were talking, I'm going, she really did make the case for them. So to your points, she deserves some credit for that. Again, 11:30 a.m. Eastern time is the time that the sentencing will happen. And of course, we'll be covering it here on Court TV. Joe Tamburino, always wonderful to have you as a guest on the show. Thank you so much. Friends at home, thank you for being with us here on Opening Statements. If you like the show, you can watch it again. Go to courttv.com. Just click on that shows tab. We put the episodes up for you every weekday morning. That's all for this episode of Opening Statements, my friends. I'm your host, Julie Grant, and it's been great being with you. On this show, I am calling out any pants on fire moments in our big trials and true crime stories, and I want you to come along with me. Opening Statements is live every weekday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern on Court TV. Thank you for downloading this episode. Please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your friends. You can watch past shows anytime you like on courttv.com.